Welcome to another episode of the I Can Do Anything podcast. My name's Colin, and boy, it was an exciting night in NBA basketball. So that's what I'm going to be talking about because I can do anything. So I wanted to get to 7 games last night, and I ended up getting to 6 out of the 7. There were 11 games last night, and I think the majority of them, for the most part, were pretty exciting games, highlighted by the special performance by Stephen Curry, which I'll get to. Giannis looks really, really good still and is playing like an MVP. As I was watching the Bucks game last night, I realized that in my MVP discussion from yesterday, that I left Giannis out of it. And after I'm going to get to the MVP conversation again at the end of this episode, but I realized that I left him out, and I put together a little MVP scoring matrix almost to kind of measure and get an idea of who should be the MVP. And I think it's something that could change the way we look at the MVP race each year. So I'm going to do that weekly, but I'm going to get to that later. I want to start with the Mavs and the Hawks. The Hawks won 111 to 104, but the Mavericks led a majority of the way in this game. Young wasn't very good last night at all, really. Trae Young had a very rookie-like night and ended up actually... Well, Kent Bazemore led their team in scoring with 32. Kent Bazemore played really, really well last night. I've never seen him... I think it was his... I'm positive that it was his career high in scoring, 54% from the field. Only 3 of 11 from 3, but also had 7 assists. He played really well for the Hawks. Taron Prince played really well, but Trae Young had a really bad game for the most part. Shot 25% from the field, but still finished with 17, was 1 of 3 from 3, 76% from the free throw line, could be way better. 5 assists, but 5 turnovers, and his plus minus was -6. Luka Doncic looked really well, really good rather, in the very beginning of the game. He's a very kind of just awkward. He almost reminds me of like a miniature Dirk, sort of the way, or like a mix between Dirk and like Paul Pierce, kind of the way he gets his shots. Very unconventional and just kind of awkward almost. But he finished with 21 points. Only shot 38% from the field, which is all right, but not the greatest. 2 of 9 from 3, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 turnovers. But again, he's a rookie, so you can sort of live with the mistakes and there's a learning curve. Wesley Matthews played well, 42% from the field on 23 points. Took probably way too many threes. 5 of 14 from the 3-point line. That's a lot of fucking 3-pointers. He almost took as many as Steph did last night, but didn't shoot nearly the percentage that Steph did. And I'm going to get to you know what? Fuck it. There's not much else to talk about in the Dallas and Hawks game, so I'm going to get to Steph. I mean, what a fun performance to watch. You know, when I think about the MVP award, you measure the stats. I always look at plus minus, and then I look at the team's record. But there's a superstar element to the MVP award. There's a flair that also has to be factored in. I think nowadays that flair is maybe factored in a little bit too much. It's almost like the hype machine. And I think that's I think that's a big reason why James Harden won MVP last year. But so I think it's a little too much goes into this currently, but I do think that it has to be at least a part of it. And I think it kind of weighs into this little matrix that I've put together, which I'm going to get into at the end of this podcast. I keep teasing that. Maybe I should just jump into it now. I'm not going to. But it's the wow factor. It's the spectacular performance element to the MVP award. And you know it when you see it. You know an amazing performance as you're watching it, and that's exactly what it was for Steph last night. It was such a high-paced game. You know, the score at halftime was 80-71, and the final score was 121 to 144 against the Wizards. But it's not, and it's really not like either team was playing bad defense. I know the Warriors weren't happy at halftime with their defense, but that's just kind of, it was just better offense in a lot of cases, like really amazing offense, especially from Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. Draymond Green distributed the ball really, really well. Had 10 assists at the half, or maybe 11 assists at the half. It was 11 assists at half. Ended up with 12 assists, though. So that's a little bit disappointing. But, I mean, it's a great game, but sort of disappointing that you go into the half with 11 and only finish with 12. But, you know, I'm pretty damn sure he didn't play much in the fourth quarter, if at all. But Curry was 15 of 24 from the field, 62%, and 11 of 16 from three, 68%, 10 of 10 from the line, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a plus or minus of 19. It seemed like Kevin Durant in that game, it's almost like he doesn't miss mid-range jump shots. You know, a lot of people talk about DeMar DeRozan being, you know, the king of the mid-range, and I just watched a players-only feature that TNT, or I guess that the NBA Network did, on DeMar DeRozan and his love of the game and the history of the game and how he's studied, you know, the game before before the 3-point line was added, and he's often looked at as the master of the mid-range, and that's what they called him in this feature, and talked a lot about why he fell in love with the mid-range jump shot. But, you know, Kevin Durant's greatness, that's part of his greatness, obviously, is his shooting ability. But I think when you think about Kevin Durant, you probably think about his, you know, he's a 7-footer that can shoot threes and dribble and all that, but he doesn't miss mid-range jump shots. When he's within, if it's a 2-pointer and it's a jump shot, he just rises over the top of whoever's guarding him. And what was his percentage last night? He shot 72% from the field, 13 of 18, and was 1 of 3 from 3. But that field goal, maybe it was last night in particular, I felt like he wasn't missing any jump shots in the mid-range. Also had 8 rebounds and 7 assists, a steal and a block. But Damon Jones didn't play very much and didn't play very well in those minutes. Jordan Bell kind of took a good amount of minutes, and I talked about this in a previous episode, how Jordan Bell didn't play in a couple games and wasn't playing very much at all, but played 20 minutes last night, had a really an awesome alley-oop from Draymond Green where he caught it with one hand and barely threw it in, but 8 points, 4 of 4 from the field, probably all dunks, and 3 rebounds, 3 assists. I guess it's amazing to me how much Steph Curry's shot just completely opens up the floor for him to do, and that team to do anything he wants. If he, in his dribbling ability, I've talked about in previous episodes as well, but his dribbling ability combined with his shot and then his finishing ability at the rim makes him completely unguardable. Like, all he has to do is move his eyebrows up and then make a dribble move, or maybe not even make a dribble move, just like go towards the basket. And defenders you have to react to it. You have to stay completely connected to him. And he's so quick and handles the ball so well that the second that you make a move, he just counter moves and goes right past you and finishes at the rim so well. There was a play where he drove past somebody last night, and they called a foul on the drive, and then he kept going towards the hoop and just threw the ball up, did like a scoop, kind of like a finger roll, but threw the ball up out of the cameras. It went above the main camera for the games at center court. It went up out of the screen, probably 40 to 50, maybe 60 feet in the air, and came down and went in. And there was a video on Bleacher Report of him doing something similar in warm-ups where did like a really exaggerated Euro step and then just flipped the ball up like a finger roll really high in the air. And this one in warm-ups bounced and then bounced off the backboard and went in, and the team went crazy. But it's just that is the definition of a spectacular performance. When he pulls up from 32 feet and you're like, oh, that's going in. Every time you see it go up, you just kind of assume it goes in. And Kerr touched on this at the end of the game or after the game in the press conference. Like for any other guy, these are terrible shots. But with him, it's just like, yeah, that's probably going in. It's really fascinating to watch. After Blake Griffin's 50-point night and then Steph Curry's 50-point night, there'll probably be another one tonight. Giannis played really fucking well last night. 32 points, 18 rebounds, 10 assists against the 76ers. I'm going to get to that game in a second. There was a couple more things I wanted to talk about with Steph Curry. The last couple shots that he took were really, really deep threes, and they were just heat check shots. And I just found those kind of funny that he's even got like I was talking about before, just the idea that he pulls up and shoots it from just inside of the logo at center court, and I thought they were going in, and it wouldn't have surprised anybody if they did go in. At that point, he's just kind of an asshole. Like if you're playing against him and he does that, like you'd probably be pissed. But for anybody else, it's fucking spectacular. So now let's get into the Bucks and 76ers. Antetokounmpo, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to say. It kind of just speaks for itself as you watch him play. He's having a historic season. I forget what the metric was. I keep saying metric. Why am I saying that so much? There was some stat that they pulled up last night about the start to his season and it being similar to something that Wilt Chamberlain did or at a start of a season. I don't remember what NBA legend it was, but he's having a historic beginning to his season. Shot 50% from the field, 12 of 24, was 0 of 3 from 3. Sometimes I'm surprised he even takes threes. But it's probably a good thing that he does just to keep the defense at bay. Was 8 of 9 from the free throw line, 18 rebounds, 10 assists, 5 turnovers, but still a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, 2 steals, 3 blocks, was plus 11. Chris Middleton played really well too, 25 points, 33% from the field is all right on 18 shots, 3 of 8 from 3, which is pretty good, and then 4 rebounds and 4 assists. Brook Lopez is one of these new NBA centers that you wouldn't think. It seems like Brook Lopez is the epitome of that all centers have to be able to shoot threes now. If Brook Lopez is shooting and making threes, he was 5 of 11 last night from 3. He took 11 3-pointers. 4 or 5 years ago, Brook Lopez would have been shot in the face if he took a 3-pointer by his coach. And he made fucking 5 of them last night and had 21 points and took 11. And only had 1 rebound. The guy's 7 foot, probably 7'1". 1 rebound, 11 3-pointers. Eric Bledsoe continues to play pretty well. He's not really a standout point guard in this league, I don't think, but I think he's a great accessory to a team with other stars like Chris Middleton and Antetokounmpo. Malcolm Brogdon's kind of the same way. He's not overly skilled, but just really smart and a really solid player. Was 0 of 4 last night from 3 and 3 of 12, 25% from the field last night. So didn't have the greatest game, but it's really fun to watch Antetokounmpo. Like I said before, it's another one of these things where you can just. He didn't have like a necessarily as I don't think anyone when Steph's doing what Steph does. I don't think there's anyone that's more spectacular to watch, maybe other than LeBron. I think those two are it's a completely different style, but I think the wow factor is very similar with Steph and LeBron. But other than those two, nobody really wows me the way they do. But Antetokounmpo is definitely just a commanding force. It's not necessarily spectacular, although some of his dunks and just his ability to get to the rim, where a lot of other guys would just lay up a shot or shoot a little runner or something. His ability to get all the way to the rim and finish with his hands on the rim is pretty fascinating. But it's just not to the degree. I mean, Steph Curry is like a fucking magician. He just throws the ball in the air 60 feet and somehow it goes in. And oh, by the way, he's like 35 feet from the little circle thing that he's shooting the ball into. Let's go to Lakers Suns. The Lakers got their first win of the season in a pretty pedestrian performance by LeBron James, to his standards. 19 points in 28 minutes, which is really a positive thing. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players play more than 20 minutes. Now part of that is because they blew out one of the worst teams in the league. But it's good to get those guys at the bottom of the roster some minutes. And that's with Ingram and Rondo out. But Josh Hart got the start over Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and had 15 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 62% from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, 66% from 3. And they need that shooting really bad, so that's a really positive. JaVale McGee he wasn't the leading scorer. Lance Stevenson was the leading scorer, but JaVale had 20, 61% shooting, took a couple of jump shots that probably shouldn't have taken, but again, it's the Suns, so and made a 3. I was looking at his free throws. I saw 3 of 6 and thought he made 3 threes and must have completely missed that. But 4 blocks for JaVale. He is going to be a really important rim protector come playoffs for them. Lonzo Ball had a pretty average game, but 12 points in 28 minutes. Lance Stevenson, though, is going to be really, really positive for the second unit for the Lakers. It was 10 of 14, 71% from the field. A lot of his points come in the paint and, close to mid-range jump shots. Was 1 of 2 from 3, but his activity, when it's channeled in the right manner and he's not getting overzealous. Now, I'll be impressed if he can continue to play this way, and especially just keeping the emotions under control the way he has down the stretch when the emotions start to bubble up and when the pressure is really on. But 8 rebounds, 8 assists, only 3 turnovers. So Lance is going to be a really, really important piece of that second rotation. He's got free reign, and you can tell. I mean, he's playing point. He's playing a lot of point actually with that group, but as a point guard is doing a lot of the scoring. But it's really important for them to be able to get wins. Now, again, it's the Phoenix Suns, so you don't want to draw too much from it. But it's really important for them to get wins on nights where LeBron seems like just a regular NBA player. 19 points, 43% shooting, 20% from 3. Now he did have a double-double, 10 assists and 7 rebounds, so almost a triple-double on a very pedestrian night. So that's going to be really important come playoff time, when if LeBron can just have a regular night and there can be other guys scoring and carrying at least like 20% of the offensive load would be really, really nice. Okay, Bucks and Raptors. Derrick Rose continues to play really well with that second unit and just really well in general. He's pretty often out on the floor at the end of the game and was last night. Come on, where are you at? Timberwolves, Raptors, box score. Derrick Rose had 16 points in 29 minutes, 43% from the field, 7 of 16, 2 of 3 from 3, 66%. That's really positive. 2 of those threes, the 2 he made, were on back-to-back possessions. 5 assists, 2 turnovers, so a good assist to turnover ratio. But he just seems to be really back in the flow, and it's really exciting to watch him play. He doesn't have that acceleration and that speed. It's obviously still mind-blowing speed, but it's just not what it was before. But still really, really fun to watch. The scoring was pretty spread out for the Timberwolves. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures. Jimmy Butler had 53% shooting on 7 of 13, 4 of 7 from 3, 57% shooting, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. And this comes on a night where, Andrew Wiggins was out with an injury. One of very few games that he's missed I think he's in his 5th year in his 5-year NBA career. Karl Anthony Towns didn't play like an all-star at all, 35 minutes, 14 points, 5 of 17, 29% shooting, 1 of 5 from 3. Only went to the free throw line 3 times. 8 rebounds is good, but he could get that in a quarter probably if he wanted to. Kawhi Leonard on the other side of the ball played really, really well again, and he's in the conversation in my top 6. I've made it a top 6 instead of a top 5 to add Antetokounmpo. But Leonard played 35 minutes, 35 points on 65% shooting, 23 shots, 2 of 4 from 3. Kawhi Leonard's another one of these guys that has perfected the mid-range jump shot, just rising, getting to a spot and rising over a defender the same way that Kevin Durant does. Maybe not to the same magnitude because he's not as long, but he just seems to be able to get really good separation and then just rise over people when he gets to his spots. I think what DeMar DeRozan does in a lot of cases is kind of he hits a lot of, maybe the shots are a little bit more difficult just because they have to be, because he's not as tall as Leonard and Durant, but he fades away a little bit, and his shots seem to be tougher. So maybe that's what makes it seem like he's maybe a better or a more exciting mid-range jump shooter, is because the shots look a little more difficult because he doesn't quite get the same separation, but still shoots the ball at a really good percentage. So that's exciting to watch so far. It's been, I think part of the reason why I had Leonard in my top 5 for MVP yesterday over Antetokounmpo is partially because the Bucks didn't play on that night that I was evaluating games, but I think just because Kawhi Leonard's new to the Raptors and new to the team, and the Bucks, Antetokounmpo has been with the Bucks, so there's kind of that new shiny object element to Leonard right now. But Antetokounmpo last night, and with the historic run that he's off to thus far in the season, is certainly drawing my attention, and I think a lot of people's attention around the NBA. Okay, a less exciting game was the Jazz-Rockets. There was a closeout that James Harden made. I believe it was somewhere in the second quarter, and I believe it was on Donovan Mitchell. And Donovan Mitchell had a hell of a game last night. He seems to get to the basket and kind of like DeRozan, but at the basket, finishes so well under duress and just contorts his body all over the place. As I would edit driveway basketball videos, which are on my YouTube channel. You're already up there. Just go watch some driveway basketball videos. But as I would edit, I would always feel like I was editing sort of biased, because when I was in the driveway basketball videos, I sort of tended to do that as I finished around the basket, and just kind of in general, shooting fadeaways, and just, with, as you go in the air and avoid defenders and stuff, not flailing your arms, but just contorting your body to maneuver around defenders in the air. That was always stuff that I think added a really cool dimension to the videos, just because movement in video it, as a whole is really interesting. I think it just adds, when I have subjects do testimonials for my work at the university, we always try to tell them to put their hands up in the frame, and that's kind of the Ricky Bobby thing. You get your hands up in the air and you don't know what to do with your hands. But I would always edit my highlights in the driveway basketball videos with extra replays and slow them down, whereas some of the other people that were playing would just finish a layup. And maybe that speaks to just kind of my personality overall in general versus some of my friends, is I was always a little more flashy, I guess, in a lot of ways. But I think that I'm straying away from the Donovan Mitchell thing. I think that's what adds a really fun element to Donovan Mitchell's game, is his finishing ability at the rim. But the Jazz Rockets game last night, I was talking about James Harden's closeout. That's how I got on Donovan Mitchell. He closed out and just barely. I don't even want to call it a closeout. He just kind of jogged out there, and as Mitchell went by him, he didn't even try. And it kind of sums up, to me, it sums up James Harden sort of as a whole. He's obviously a great scorer, but I think part of why he's a great scorer is because he has completely manipulated the referees and sort of manipulated the minds of defenders as you're playing him. The way he sweeps the ball up through their arms, and a lot of times when he gets foul calls, you see defenders just kind of complaining to the ref, what am I supposed to do? I didn't do anything. He went into me. My problem is that he initiates a lot of the contact. And part of that is really smart and strategic. You're analyzing the rules and the flow and the gameplay of a game that's over, this great game that we all love, basketball. And he has figured it out to a T and figured out how he can manipulate the system. And while I do knock him sometimes, it is actually quite genius. Why not get to the free throw line and just shoot 18 free throws? How many free throws did he shoot last night? He didn't have a great performance. 29 points. Okay, he played well. 29 points, 10 of 19 shooting on 52% shooting, 3 of 4 from 3. Only shot 9 free throws, but there's games where James Harden will shoot 20 free throws. So I'm not a huge James Harden fan, but I think that kind of just sums up James Harden and their team. I'm not a fan. I don't like watching their games all that much. Now, Carmelo Anthony he shot the ball as well as he has all season last night. In 38 minutes, he had 22 points, 9 of 17 shooting, 52% from the field, 3 of 8 from 3. But 37% shooting from 3 it's good. It's not Steph, but nobody's Steph. I don't know what Steph is shooting from 3 this season. His average tends to be maybe a little bit skewed just because he takes so many, but again, he makes a lot of them too, so he always shoots a really high 3-point percentage. But for Carmelo Anthony, 3 of 8 from 3 is good. 7 rebounds, 2 assists, no turnovers, but was -5. All but 2 of the Rockets players that played had a negative plus-minus last night. I just don't really like watching them play that much. And the Jazz, I love watching them play. So it was kind of a contrasting game in a lot of ways, just in style and effort level from both teams. Donovan Mitchell really kind of willed that team to a win last night. He and Rudy Gobert and Joe Ingles were the only ones in double figures, and Ingles had 11. Gobert had 12. And again, it's not really, they're NBA players, so it is a little bit difficult, obviously, but not a super difficult thing to do against the Houston defense. Okay, I've covered Bucks Sixers. I've covered Jazz Rockets, Lakers Suns, T-Wolves Raptors, Mavs Hawks, Wizards Warriors. All right, let's talk about the MVP matrix. So there's that matrix word again. So I went and looked at points per game, rebounds, assists, plus minus, steals, blocks, and then each player's record that is in this MVP race, so to speak, even though it's it's the second week of the NBA season. So, and the way I had it yesterday was Anthony Davis 1, Blake Griffin 2, Nikola Jokic 3, Kawhi Leonard 4, and Steph Curry 5. And then again, as I was watching the Bucks game, I was like, oh wow, I think I left Antetokounmpo off, but I don't really know who I would replace. So I'm going to make it a top 6. I'm going to do a top 6 every week, and I'm going to measure it by looking at the more important offensive and defensive statistics, and then adding in the player's plus minus, and then their team's record. So points, rebounds, plus minus, steals, blocks, and then that team's record. So I went and looked at each player's statistics for all those categories. I could probably add, and I think I will add the next time I do this for next week, I will add field goal percentage and maybe 3-point percentage as well, just because obviously field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, the 3-pointer is such a big element of today's game. So I ranked each statistic by who had the highest, and then whoever had the highest, I would give 1 point, and then the second highest 2 points. So for each category, a player either got 1 point or 6 points or somewhere in between, and the player with the lowest score, kind of like golf, would win, and then from there on would be 1 through 6. So points per game, Blake Griffin is currently at 36.3, Steph Curry 34.6, Anthony Davis 30.3, Antetokounmpo 28.5, Kawhi Leonard 28, and Nikola Jokic 23.3. And it's early in the season. A lot of there's 3 of those guys are above 30. The season, I doubt anybody, maybe there'll be a couple people that finish the season above 30, but I doubt anybody finishes the season above maybe what Antetokounmpo is at now, 30.3. Those are just really inflated because there's such a small amount of games to draw the percentage from. So Blake Griffin gets a point at 36.3, Steph Curry 34.6 gets 2 points, Anthony Davis 3 points, Antetokounmpo 4 points, Leonard 5 points, and Jokic 6 points. So then rebounds, Antetokounmpo leads with 16.5 per game, Anthony Davis 13, Blake 11.3, Jokic 10.5, Leonard 7.8, and Curry 4.8. And then assists, Jokic 7, Steph Curry 6.8, and that's a big one there. Jokic leading those 6 in assists. Antetokounmpo third, 6.8. Blake Griffin fourth, 5.7. Anthony Davis 5.3, and Kawhi Leonard 2.5. And then plus minus, Anthony Davis with 19.7 plus minus. Kawhi Leonard second with 14.8, Jokic third with 12.8, Antetokounmpo fourth with 11.3, Steph Curry fifth with 10.4, and Blake Griffin is sixth with 9.7. So then to steals, Anthony Davis 2 steals a game. That's a lot kind of for steals per game. Jokic 1.5, Kawhi Leonard 1.3, Curry and Antetokounmpo both finish with 1, and Blake Griffin with 0. And I just realized as I was reading that Curry and Antetokounmpo were tied, but I wrote Curry above Antetokounmpo, so I gave Antetokounmpo an extra point than I should have given him, which would put him in the overall total. He's tied in my overall total with Jokic, so I will fix that here as I'm going through it. But Blake Griffin, or not Blake Griffin, I just said a name. Blocks, Anthony Davis finished first with 3.3, Antetokounmpo second, 1.3. Jokic, 0.8. Blake Griffin, 0.7. Kawhi Leonard, 0.1. And Steph Curry, 0.2. And then for record, because there are 5 of the players are on teams that are undefeated. I probably could have weighed in like strength of schedule, but I'm just a guy. I don't have time for that shit. So for all the undefeated, the top 5, I just gave them 1 point. And then for Steph Curry, who has 1 loss, I just gave him 2 points. Okay, so the overall totals were Anthony Davis had 14 overall, so he's in first. Antetokounmpo had 20, but then because of the steals, you would take 1 away from him, so he would actually have 19. And then Jokic third with 20, Blake Griffin fourth with 25, and then Steph Curry and Kawhi Leonard tied for what would be sixth at 27 points. So the top 5 again: Anthony Davis, Antetokounmpo, Jokic, Blake Griffin, Steph Curry, and Kawhi. And I actually, without just recognizing that scoring mistake, had Antetokounmpo above Jokic just because of his historic start and just kind of his overall wow factor over Jokic. I know that is kind of unfair for a guy like Jokic specifically, who just kind of plays it below the rim, almost kind of boring style of basketball just because of how fucking huge he is. But that's my MVP gatherings for the day. I think that about wraps it up. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. This is a great fucking time. I can't believe that I watched 6 basketball games. It really helps when I was able to watch about a game and a half last night before I fell asleep. Sometimes I can't even barely watch a game before falling asleep. I watched a couple I was bouncing back and forth a little bit last night, so I watched a couple quarters of 2 games and 1 full game. The first game, the Mavs and the Hawks, and then caught the rest during work while I was doing some editing today. So I can't believe I watched that many games, but this is so much fun to put this stuff together and really dive into this stuff. So I'm really fucking enjoying this, and I don't even know how to end this. I'm trying to incorporate a kind of a catchy way to say that I can do anything, and incorporate it into what I've been talking about. But it seems like Steph Curry certainly can do anything. And if Steph Curry can do anything, then so can you.